I think I'm torn between unlimited money, which I think would be the dream, but I don't think that's realistic, even with a magic wand. So, look, perfect forecast. If we had perfect forecast, if you had perfect visibility on what your sales were going to do over the next 6 months, 1 year, even 3 months, that would, I think, transform the lives of operations people who are responsible for supply chains and trying to manage inventory. That's what I would choose.
Welcome to Chain Reaction, the podcast for the supply chain and logistics industry. If you enjoy this conversation, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to Chain Reaction podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, Max Adorian, who is an expert in FMCG operations. He had quite a journey, and he is now running operations at Living Things Soda. Max, one of the questions I love asking guests is how did you ended up on operations? Logistics obviously is covered with the wider kind of umbrella of the operations. It's whether that was by choice or by accident. How come?
Thanks, Michael. Great to be here. Thank you for having me. It's a good question. I think, like a lot of people, operations sort of finds you. You don't necessarily find operations. I don't think it's a lifestyle that many people would choose to have. It's not the most conducive to sleep when you're worrying about lead times and deliveries into depots and whether a pallet is going to collapse, all those kind of things. But I started out kind of as an entrepreneur myself. I started out in drop shipping, actually, e-commerce, which is a great introduction to operations because you don't have to do any operations yourself. It's the easiest way to run a business, really. You don't have to worry about stock as long as you've got a decent supplier. From that, I went into technology, and really from there, logistics wasn't a part of my life at all. It was a marketplace, and I got burnt, I guess, a bit doing that. COVID struck. I took a few months off, and I saw a really interesting role at a company called Vital for operations associate. I had no operations experience at the time. I applied for that role, and they rejected me. But I guess the CEO there must have seen something a little bit interesting for him, at least. And I reached out and said, look, I really enjoyed the interview process. I appreciate this role maybe wasn't for me. But if anything comes up, if you have any projects, anything you'd like me to work on, then, let me know. I'm available. I'm sitting around. I'm not doing too much. And luckily he wrote back, and I joined Vital in the role of head of special projects, which was an incredible experience. I really got to do a bit of everything across the business, from anything from marketing to finance and operations. And operations really was where I started to spend more and more of my time. It's what I started to enjoy the most. It's fixing problems and putting out fires, something that I really, really enjoy doing. And if that's something you like doing, then operations is great for you. And I guess I kind of fell into it that way. And then it made sense for my kind of logical next step in my career to go from being this real kind of generalist head of special projects to focusing on operations, which is where I was kind of having the most enjoyment from my work.
Well, this is very interesting, and it's very, very often the journey for majority of colleagues that are in that space. So, can you talk a little bit then about the Living Things Soda? Because my understanding is it's an indie brand that has that is growing, and there's quite a lot of kind of growth stories or growth elements that you've been part of that you can talk about. So, can you talk a little bit about not just the product and what it is and what it does and what it's good for, because that's also quite interesting, but also what sort of operational challenges that you fought with. What are the fires that you had to put out?
Yeah, well, at one point we actually had a literal fire at our factory when the boiler for the pasteurizer set fire, and we lost a whole batch of product, and we were out of stock for a while, right in the first 3 or 4 months. So that was a literal fire that had to be put out and figure out how we were going to get all of the ingredients back in time to reproduce, but we can talk about that maybe a little bit later. Living Things has been an incredible journey. So we launched in December 2023. We got our first cans. So we did that first production run. It was tiny. I think it was 9,000 cans of 3 flavors. I think we're probably selling more than that a day nowadays. But it was amazing, right? You have this idea, you go through the branding process, and you see it come to life. You get to see the cans printed for the first time, and then you get this product that you can kind of crack open and drink and enjoy. But the growth journey since then has been really exciting for us. So Living Things is now available in 14 different countries across Europe and as far away as Singapore. We are listed in Tesco and Waitrose, as well as on Ocado. And then I think what we're most proud of is we're in thousands of independent stores and coffee shops across the UK, which is really where we've built the brand and built the business from.
Well, it's not just a regular soda, is it? So it's biologically active. That's what I surmise from the website.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah,
that's where the word living comes from, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Potentially. So yeah, it's a prebiotic soda, right? Which is a much bigger category in the US than it is in the UK and Europe. It's fairly nascent here, but it is starting to grow and we're seeing more and more competitors popping up. We were fairly early to the party, but we weren't the first in Europe to be doing this. But yeah, it's a prebiotic soda. So each can has 6.5 grams of fiber, which is prebiotic. It's kind of just short for prebiotic fiber, which feeds the probiotics, the live cultures in your gut. And we also have 1 billion probiotics in every can as well. But due to the marketing restrictions on health claims, we don't talk too much about probiotics.
Right. Okay. I understand. So, an interesting topic that we discussed before the call is the junction between the finance and operations, especially in the fast growth environments. You have both sides are looking at the same problem kind of from two different vantage points, and operations looks at it a bit from a bit more physical kind of the point of view, and the finance looks at it obviously from the cash management point of view, and that I'm sure have resulted in few tense discussions. So can you give us example, and can you give us what potentially those things kind of what topics are sparked those things and how you've solved them?
So I was lucky enough to be asked to speak at the fantastic Ops Fest in London this year, and this was the panel that I was on. It was all about finance and operations and the tensions that arise between the two, but there are synergies as well, right? So we're not always at odds with one another. So I'll definitely be reiterating some of the things that the far smarter people up on stage said than me. I think I've absorbed a lot from that session, but the first thing I always say, especially to people working in startups, is that finance and operations, they're two very different things. And yet somehow, perhaps it's because operations people spend a lot of time on spreadsheets, we sort of end up having finance dumped on us a little bit. If you're in a small company, you end up wearing both hats. And at times you really do have to kind of separate church and state a little bit. You can't necessarily be deciding how you're going to spend the money, because an operations person sees price breaks and they want to have enough stock to cover the sales team's massive forecast. So they're going to go ahead and order everything. And they don't necessarily take into account payment terms and cash flow and what it means when a customer is not paying you for 90 days, but you've got to pay upfront for your supplier because you've got no trading history. And you're going to be completely without that cash for at least 90 days, not even taking into account the time it takes to sell the product. And you're paying storage for it that whole time as well. So yeah, I think operations people, we think about it in terms of units and stock cover, kind of looking ahead in that sense, making sure we're not stocking out and disappointing commercial teams. But finance people, they're thinking all about in pounds, right? And they're really seeing the gaps in that cash flow. And it's the only way to get around that. If you're not doing both roles in the company, and hopefully you're not. Hopefully you have someone who's an expert in finance who can hold your hand a little bit through all this. But it's kind of being really on top of your numbers and understanding actually, if I buy this stock today, when are we going to get the cash back from that stock? How long are we going to be sat on it when essentially we won't have that money in our bank account to pay for salaries and everything else, marketing expenses, etc. So yeah, obviously people, we want to hold stock. We want to avoid stockouts. We're so tempted by price breaks because you see how much cheaper you can get something. But the reality of payment terms and kind of those cash cycles, it's just not possible to kind of find that balance. You can never really be perfectly balanced, I think, between your stock holding and your cash flow. It's a dance that I'm still looking to solve.
Well, that's interesting analogy that you bring is kind of a dance, and as they say, it takes two to tango. And you need to be versed, also my experience that you need to be versed in both subjects to actually have that kind of understanding. Because when sometimes the functions kind of put on blinkers and they just look only the way that they see the world, it's very hard to communicate in between. So what would you find as a good and productive way to actually communicate with your kind of opposite number on the finance side of things? And how do you get, I mean, because theoretically you have almost like a competing objectives. The finance guys want to have a lot of cash reserves, and costs down, and the operations guys we need to have availability. We need to have stocks to the roof and make sure that we have every can that customer wants available for shipments, and we don't care as long as it gets delivered on time.
Yeah, there's definitely that tension, right? The opposing sides. The one thing I'll say is that where we're all on the same team and pushing together is on margin protection and make sure we're getting good margins, right? That's something that makes both the ops team and the finance team very happy, and the commercial team, even if maybe they're on the other side of that slightly, right? They're trying to win a customer and take a bit of a hit to margin. But both ops and finance are very much aligned on that kind of team sport of margin protection. The key thing there for us has always been communication, having forecasts that you can trust, numbers that you can really trust, looking at a spreadsheet and going, okay, is this actually going to be how it plays out, or do I need to kind of give this a bit of a haircut? And as soon as you start sort of looking at it and sort of wishing that it's going to be right, that's when you need to be worried. You need to look at it and trust it. And it's actually something I'm going through right now. This afternoon, I'm going to be going through our cash flow forecast and trying to figure out if it's accurate or not. And if it's not accurate, we could have a major problem. So working hand in hand with finance teams, but also with commercial teams, so that you've got that kind of sales outlook as well, is key to us. And never underestimating the power of payment terms. And there's a reason why finance teams will always be pushing on payment terms. Even if you've got a supplier that will supply you something for less, sometimes worth looking at the ones who'll be a bit more flexible on payment terms than the ones who'll just do it as cheaply as possible.
No, I understand. Well, this is interesting because one of the things, I mean, we'll touch on the forecasting in a second, but one of the things that kind of occurred to me through my career, so I used to be a management consultant and now kind of working in a space where with our logistics platform, we actually provide the visibility. So I think it's the visibility side of things, is a transparency and clarity. So both parties effectively looking at the same data set, but maybe from two different sides. But at the end of the day, they're looking at the same data set. So there is no miscommunication. There is no misunderstanding of where the numbers are coming from. And that kind of a solid data foundation, at least in my experience, is as an absolute must for then you can build on the forecast and so forth. So maybe what are the other kind of best practices that you may have found or kind of discovered or applied in your business that actually helped you to communicate effectively or to work effectively with your finance counterparts, or you're taking quite a lot of that finance function on yourself?
Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of wearing two hats at the moment for us, and that does mean communicating with myself is pretty easy. But it also makes it slightly harder to put the guardrails up for myself as well, depending on which hat I'm wearing. I think the key to communicating with the team, especially around finance, is having that budget that you can always point to and always refer to. Every single company has to have a forecast and a budget, and everything has to be in that budget. And when someone comes along and asks, say, hey, we've got this great idea for marketing activation, we want to do this, or the sales team come along and say, look, we've got this massive opportunity, we want to go in and do FSDUs in 500 Tesco stores, and we're going to need all this stock to do it. It's kind of pointing to the budget and saying, look, is this in the budget? And if it's not in the budget, we can't do it. And you don't want to be the person who always says no to stuff. So I think there's this idea of the kind of the yes if. So yes, we can do that if we decide not to do this other thing that we said we were going to do. And that's a great tool to fall back on, especially when communicating with a team. And you don't always want to be the person who says no to stuff. I think often finance and operations are seen as the know people, the maybe slightly more boring and guarded and reserved people that are scared of risk and hold back the commercial teams. So trying to move away from being the no people who say no to everything to the kind of yes, if, and that's something I really try and do and work with the team to do and say, look, yes, we can do that thing that you've just asked for if we don't do this other thing that we said we were going to do 6 months ago. And that for me has been a great tool with negotiating with the commercial teams in particular, actually, to keep things moving, keep things exciting. We're growing quickly. We need to take on these opportunities. We can't say no to everything. But we also can't say yes to everything. The old saying of you can do anything, but you can't do everything. I think rings really true when you have that kind of cash flow restriction. We don't have an unlimited budget. We can't just go ahead and say yes to absolutely everything. Even if we had the money, we still have lead times. Logistics still takes time. We can't deliver 500 FSDUs into Tesco next week, but maybe we can do 100 in 2 weeks' time. That's the kind of negotiation that we have. And I think that's where having good relationship and communication across teams, not just ops and finance, but ops, finance, sales, marketing, everyone, has been the key. And it's taking it outside of just communicating on Slack, making sure you're meeting in person regularly, calls if not, and making sure we're all on the same page with those kind of weekly meetings to go through the budget.
You are listening to Chain Reaction. This podcast is brought to you by Phlox, the leading marketplace for the supply chain and logistics industry. Visit phlox.is to find out how you find the perfect supplier or make your services available to prospective buyers. Thanks for tuning in. Now back to the show.
Right. Yeah, no, that kind of discipline is absolutely crucial, because you might end up kind of spreading yourself too thinly. And there is a saying, if you run after 2 rabbits, you catch none.
Nice. Yeah, I like that.
That's the discipline, exactly, and it requires a disciplined mindset as well. And I'm being on a commercial side of things, as well as on the finance side of things. I know exactly. So when you on the commercial side of things, like everything is an opportunity, and you want to go after every single thing, and then absolutely you need to kind of restrain yourself. But it's interesting point that we talked about, kind of the forecasting that you mentioned, and so especially in a fast growing business like yours, and I saw on the website you guys mentioned that kind of we're selling while stock lasts. So sometimes the stockouts happen. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges of the fast growing business, especially in relation to also kind of the forecast and agility, the whole operational kind of setup that gets impacted by forecasts negatively, or how the correct forecast actually aids operations? It's a very interesting subject to explore as well.
Yeah, I mean, forecasting is kind of part science, part art, part luck, right? And you'll never have a perfect forecast. You always either have slightly too much stock or slightly not enough. And I think that's fine if it is slightly. But if you have nowhere near enough or way too much, that's when you get into real problems. Either you end up having to offload stock kind of on the grey market, right, via discounters, and you're paying way too much for storage, or you're disappointing customers and you end up getting delist because you're not able to keep a steady flow of supply. We've had big challenges with our supply this year through the kind of scaling up process. We forecasted a pretty big growth trajectory for ourselves this year. We've been lucky enough, I think, partly because of the brand, the product, but also these kind of tailwinds that we have in functional beverage at the moment, that we absolutely kind of blew past our forecasts in the first half of the year. And that did lead to some stockouts and some unhappy customers. And we had to do all sorts of crazy things to try and stay in stock and kind of move stock around and service people best we could. And for us, ultimately, we've learned now that we need to be forecasting more often. We need to be doing it almost on a weekly basis, re-looking at forecasts, re-evaluating our forecasts. My sales team recently came to me and said, I went to a networking event and they were talking about snap forecasting. I think that's something we should be doing. So that's something we've adopted, which I didn't know about before. And we're going to be moving ahead with where we kind of basically a weekly forecast review of, this is what we said we were going to do last week. Did we do that? Yes or no? How much more stock or less stock do we have now than we thought we were going to have? And what does that mean for our next production run? For us, the key to our ability to stay somewhat on track this year has been having flexible suppliers. We have an amazing group of suppliers across the board, from ingredients to production to our logistics suppliers, who really move mountains for us. And this is something I always emphasize when I'm talking to people in operations, is that you cannot just look at the price of something, I kind of mentioned it earlier, and go, well, this person can do it cheaper, therefore I'm going to produce the product with them, or I'm going to store my product with them. It isn't, and hopefully none of my suppliers listen to this and say, well, okay, we'll put our prices up then. But it's not just about price. It is about everything beyond that: quality, service. Will they move mountains for you? And for us, where our forecasting hasn't been accurate because it's so hard to do, our partners and a lot of hard work from the team has kind of enabled us to stay somewhat on track, even if we had, as you call on our website, in stock while it lasts. A few stockouts early this year. I think we're through that now. We shouldn't have another issue again on stock.
Well, this there are two subjects or 2 points, interesting ones that you've pointed out. So one is the agility of your kind of the operational setup of your supply chain. So both that comes from your suppliers of ingredients through to productions. I can imagine that you guys control manufacture, and then all the way down to the finished goods, the deliveries and logistics operations. But also, speaking of the forecast, we are in a kind of the digital technology age. So I'm sure that you guys leverage technology quite heavily in, or maybe underusing it, because you're talking about the different kind of the stages in the snap forecast. So what are the kind of the technology sides of things that you guys kind of wrestle with in terms of the forecast, as well as the overall visibilities and the enablement of that agile network operations?
My life is essentially run through the Google platform. Google Sheets is my go-to for all of this. And it's not even as powerful as Excel, but because it's so collaborative, it works really well for us. And we are upgrading that system now. We're putting in place proper systems for forecasting and for inventory management and everything else. We've got fantastic new members of the team who are really pushing that forward. But I'm a bit of a dinosaur in the sense that I rely heavily on your sheets, and for me, it just works. I think that's the key thing: is find what works for you. And whilst the team is small enough that what works for me sort of is what works, then that's great. But as it starts to grow and we have to become a bit more formalized in how we do things, we're taking on a bit more of a tech stack in operations to help us handle the growth. So Unleashed has been a great partner for us to get better visibility on our stock holding and sell-through rates and forecasting accuracy. But at the end of the day, I still download a lot of that data, put it into an Excel or a Google Sheet, and play around with it there.
Yeah, that's a traditional way of that's the kind of a tried and tested method. I completely understand where you're coming from. However, one of the things that what we do with the platform is, with our platform, is essentially we try to give the toolkit to the users that will no longer require the use of Excel spreadsheets, for a very simple reason. As the businesses grow, as more colleagues come in, as more parties being involved, it's sometimes the maintenance of those spreadsheets become completely unyielding, and it also sits in people's heads of who designed those spreadsheets. And if those people, I don't know, move jobs or get into a different function or something, very often things kind of crumble or people struggle with, and they have to recreate stuff. So that becomes a challenge. For a more mature, for more mature, maybe more stable business, but it's a different thing, especially. But these days, there's a lot of technology. I mean, Unleashed, I've heard many times, many good things about that stuff. So, and everybody talks about AI. So, what is your technological kind of view of where do you think you guys are going? I understand you love for Google Sheets, which I share, but.
Look, it's slightly tongue in cheek. We are a bit more advanced than just that. I don't want to go too much into it, because actually it's a really core part of our strategy is being very tech focused and being super hot on the latest developments in AI, which I think is still a way off, right? AI, it's very trendy at the moment, and it is really exciting what you can do on it, and it's definitely accelerated the speed at which we're able to execute on some parts of the business, but it's a little way off being able to run our entire supply chain and forecast accurately for us, because it lacks some of the nuance at the moment. And I do think it will be there in the not too distant future. But at the end of the day, our business is drinks. It's quite traditional. You're working with suppliers who are also fairly traditional in a lot of ways, and you can't get too kind of ahead of yourself and over your skis on the tech stuff, because at the end of the day, you're still reliant on suppliers who have long lead times and who maybe are more used to working in Excel and just want to see your forecast in an Excel spreadsheet. They don't want anything fancy. So we are adopting it internally. We're using it a great deal, but we're still doing things in a fairly old-fashioned way. That said, it is definitely coming. If it's not already here, it's definitely coming for us. And I think it's going to be very, very easy to get left behind if you're not adopting this stuff as quickly as your competitors.
Well, this is an interesting point, because you mentioned AI, and everybody talks about it, but not many people know exactly what it means for them, as they say in logistics. Or I think I wrote a blog about that. Like, there's no killer application in that space just yet. But I think AI also by itself is not going to answer any questions. It is as effective, as productive as the people that are using it, which kind of brings us to the knowledge and the development of the kind of expertise in particularly in operational space. So you guys are fast growing, and I'm sure you have great young talent. But how you bring in, how you grow, how you build in an understanding of what good looks like, or what can you do, how you can. So it's the evolution of the knowledge base inside the organization. I'm sure that is, or I think that is a challenge as well. And I think we talked about on the call before the recording, that it is a little bit of and I wouldn't say an issue, but it's one of the focal elements of what you do is also building the capability among the colleagues to run operations effectively, think about operations effectively. So what is the vision? What is the vision for you in that space?
Yeah, I saw a terrifying graph the other day. Well, it's terrifying from the human side of me. Things it's terrifying. The kind of more management side things, it's quite exciting. But it was I'm sure you've seen it's going around a lot. Stock prices versus job openings since the release of GPT. And, stock prices are flying and job openings are coming right down. And I think that says a lot. I think that says a lot for junior people trying to break into all work, let alone operations. It is a little bit scary, as I said, but I also think it's really exciting. And clearly the people who are going to get these roles, who are going to find the opportunity to get into this smaller number of jobs, are going to be the people that are embracing it. They're going to getting ahead, who are way more tech savvy and focused, and kind of use it as their first port of call in all their work, over those who are kind of stuck in the past. And so for young people, I guess they have the benefit of being able to adopt technology very quickly. I am not so doom and gloom about how they will fare in the workplace. They should be able to upskill themselves quickly enough to get in to these positions and make great use of the technology. We recently hired a young operations associate who was working previously at our 3PL. Funny enough, he was working in a warehouse, and we kind of decided that was some expertise we needed to bring in, someone who understood the exact ins and outs of how warehouses and logistics work. He's actually done it at the ground level. He joined, and he couldn't believe how much we were kind of pushing the use of AI tools and software in the company. He said, this is crazy. Where I've just come from, it was sort of frowned upon to use ChatGPT, and here you're saying we'll just put in ChatGPT and it will be done in 2 seconds. And he's only been with us 3.5 months, and already he's just sort of he's his own GPT. Everything I send to him, it's clearly it's had his layer of input and his work and his kind of thought going into it. But he's turning stuff around so much faster than he ever would without it. And so that gives me a lot of confidence that we're kind of turning into slightly cyborg humans that are just able to pay more. And I think that will open up the opportunity for great people to do better things faster. What it means for the rest of humanity, I don't quite know yet.
I think we're all going to live to see whatever happens to all of us. But I 100% agree with you. And there's even a term called cyber supply chains that some people use, and I think we also wrote a post on that, which is exactly that. I don't think that the technology, especially the intelligence, artificial one, is not going to necessarily at all replace people. It's going to enhance our capabilities. It's going to enhance expertise. It's going to improve productivity, but it will not replace expertise. I think the challenge, though, is going to be how do you acquire as a human being expertise if you're over relying on ChatGPT for all the answers. That I think that would be a challenge across the board. I'm talking to our developers and programmers. They say, well, yeah, some of those models are absolutely amazing. Claude, I think 4 point something. It just said absolutely amazing in terms of a coding point of view. But you need to be an expert to understand what it tells you, because you can't just simply copy paste stuff.
100%. And the hallucinations, they're still pretty scary. The amount of incorrect information you get, it is not 100% accurate. You can't fully trust it. And if you don't have the experience to look at it, go, that doesn't sound right, or that doesn't look right, and question it, because it's so confident, it can lead to, I think, probably some quite dramatic mistakes in pulling together various.
Absolutely, especially in operational space where you can't afford the numbers being dreamed up out of nowhere. So I think and that was amazing conversation, and we definitely touched on the very interesting points. Kind of in conclusion, I like asking that question: is if you had a magic wand, and there's one thing that you can sort out in the operations, in the business, what would that be?
It's a great question. I think I'm torn between unlimited money, which I think would be the dream, but I don't think that's realistic, even with a magic wand. So look, perfect forecast. If we had perfect forecast, if you had perfect visibility on what your sales were going to do over the next 6 months, 1 year, even 3 months, that would, I think, transform the lives of operations people who are responsible for supply chains and trying to manage inventory. That's what I would choose.
Right. I think this is amazing thought, and I'm kind of in the same boat with you on that one, especially in terms of if you have a good forecast, if you know what's coming, you can prepare and you can get ahead of problems rather than firefight when they happen, have taken root, and you want to be proactive, not reactive. A good forecast helps you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You see the problems before they get you. Cool.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Max. That was amazing conversation. So thanks a lot for being a guest, and I look forward to our discussions in the future. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for tuning in to Chain Reaction. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have a story or insights to share from your sector, we'd love to hear from you. Simply reach out to us through the links in the description. See you next time.